Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mainstream Indie Music Channel. And from time to time, we kind of go away from the indie scene and we go towards the pop punk scene. So it's kind of a mix. This week is fitting into the pop punk category. Now, let's set up the scene first before we continue into the Folie, Deux story. And pardon my French, I hope I'm saying that correctly. For those who are like myself, who are old enough to remember, we have to take into consideration what was happening at the time. Fall Out Boy had just come off of two straight amazing albums, and then their very first album even was pretty solid. Very solid, in fact. Fall Out Boy and music in general, especially in the pop punk scene, was pretty much just seen as a one-trick pony, and people liked the consistency back then. People's musical tastes are not how they are right now, where if you experiment, if you try to do stuff outside of maybe like your scope of work, it's seen as like daring and seen as a good thing. Back then, people did not like that. They wanted to hear what they heard already, maybe with just some variations. But I mean, pretty much like if you knew a Fall Out Boy album was coming out, for example, you knew what you wanted it to sound like. And to me, going into this album, the previous one with Infinity on High, they had hit their magnum opus. That was everything that people wanted to see and more. It just really seemed like Fall Out Boy was on top of the music world, especially in like the rock and punk scene and pop punk, and they were just untouchable. Like it just seemed like everything they touched just worked. I mean, heck, at the time, they were even starting to raise up other artists around them. Think of, like on this channel, we've talked about this. Think of the Hush Sound, Panic at the Disco, Motion City Soundtrack. It's like they were helping out other artists now. They were that big and that good. So when they were hinting at making another new album, people were stoked. They were super excited to see what they had. They were super excited to kind of get more Infinity on High, essentially. And with their very first single that they released, I Don't Care, people were a little confused. I remember myself being a little confused as well, where it was a solid song, and it definitely was old Fall Out Boy sounding, but it lacked a certain kind of creativity to it that Infinity on High had, where they had so many layers of depth with the lyrics. I mean, heck, need I say more? Like, thanks for the memories. Like, people were expecting a lot. And I think that's where the confusion kind of sets in. Maybe at the time we were just expecting too much. I don't know. But when I Don't Care came out, people, again, were a little like, okay, I mean, sure, it's a good song. It's a solid song. And I think, if anything, it kind of abated people's fears. They kind of thought, oh, okay, this is still the same Fall Out Boy, still the same sound that we're expecting, just maybe not as creative as what we're used to. Then the album came out, and we were able to fully hear everything. Songs, which, I mean, let me take a second here before I quote unquote kind of tear into this album. I love this album, personally. I listen to it a lot, and I see where, especially like hardcore old fans of Fall Out Boy were, because I kind of came in late. I came in at the tail end of From Under the Cork Tree, and like right before Infinity on High came out, I started to listen to them more and more. But for people who were there from like square one, I can kind of get where they're coming from. But anyway, Folie, Deux comes out. I Don't Care kind of gets pushed to the background. America's Sweethearts kind of becomes the main lead single. And it's a good song, and I think a lot of old Fall Out Boys like that song. But then you get the kind of deeper cuts. You get the $20 nosebleed. You get the Coffees for Closers, which honestly is my favorite song off of that entire album. Oh no, except for What a Catch, Donnie. That's my number one song. But anyway, even that song, it's, I think fans started to notice something different. They heard a very polished studio sound. Kind of long gone were the days of songs like Dance Dance and Sugar We're Going Down. Definitely songs from their very first album. Um, People were confused. They were wondering, why was this so polished? Why was it almost so produced? What's kind of interesting now is, I mean, it's kind of sad. You don't hear Fall Out Boy really playing a lot of these old songs, especially off this album nowadays. I think maybe like What a Catch, Donnie is pretty much the only one. They might do America's Sweethearts and maybe I Don't Care every once in a while, but I think they have really kind of moved past this album. And Pete Wentz, I believe, is the one that's commented on it. And he said, like, both the fans and Fall Out Boy themselves kind of mishandled the release of this album, where I think Fall Out Boy was a little taken back by the reception, kind of the lukewarm reception from fans. And they were a little hurt. And I think they kind of, rather than maybe humbly saying like, hey, maybe just, you guys just weren't really digging the sound, they almost like doubled down and kind of got angry at their fans. So it's kind of funny, like looking back at it, Fall Out Boy's kind of like, ooh, sorry, like we kind of mishandled that as well. But honestly, I really think it's the fans. I remember it wasn't my favorite album, and I mean, let's be honest, it's still not my favorite album to this day, but it's not bad. It's a very good, solid album. And then a lot of people remember this being the time where Fall Out Boy broke up. We thought they were done; they were never coming back. Luckily, as time has passed, Fall Out Boy came back. I mean, probably bigger than ever. And I think now, with essentially just because fans of Fall Out Boy have grown up, I think a lot of people from back then now really like this album. I mean, especially if you're kind of like me and you're a little iffy with like the direction Fall Out Boy took after their hiatus, you kind of like this album. Songs like Disloyal Order of the Water Buffaloes, and a couple of the songs that I mentioned previously, I think people have kind of grown to love. What do you guys think? Let me know your favorite songs on this album. Do you like it or not? And I'll see you next week.